Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the 52 must-see movies and why they matter, a list that is getting on and on and on and on because we are well into this series of videos. And all of these films are from this book here, which is written by Jeremy Arnold with a foreword by the late, great Robert Osborne, the longtime host at Turner Classic Movies. And this episode, we will be covering a film that is considered one of the great film noirs, and that is The Third Man. Came out in 1949. It is directed by Carol Reed, and it stars Joseph Cotten and Orson Welles, as well as Trevor Howard, and Alida Valli plays the kind of romance character in the film. But this is a very interesting film. This is a much beloved film. This is a film that always makes a list of great film noirs of all time, and it's a very weird film from a certain angle. But we will probably be discussing this rather straightforward because it is a rather short film. It only clocks in about an hour and 44 minutes, and a lot of film noirs in the 1940s were relatively short. And their plots are straightforward, but they can get twisty and complicated, red herrings and plot twists and stuff like that, which is all part of the film noir genre. But I'm once again joined by my friend, fellow film friend and friend in life, Steven Billings.
What's up? Third Man. Yes. And it's definitely it's, I think what makes this not only essential, but really just different than any other film noir is it kind of takes some of them tropes and throws them away and like adds some other different elements in with the great things about what film noir brings, like the great contrasts of black and white and it kind of throws out that damsel and that kind of like, female character that's kind of like the root of all evil, like in a lot of these film noirs.
Yeah, there's no real femme fatale.
Yeah, femme fatale was the word I was looking for.
It's a bit of a murder mystery. It has some narration in there, but like we've discussed many times before, film noir really doesn't have a set list of things that it actually encompasses. It kind of is what you believe it is or something like that. But this film starts off and is set this film is entirely set in post-World War II Vienna, Austria. And Vienna at the time is kind of in a bit of a reconstructive phase, if you will. It is kind of ravaged by World War II, as most of Europe was. Europe was essentially pretty much half destroyed, and they had to rebuild it in the subsequent years afterward. But Vienna is cut into a bunch of different territories or zones. One is American, one is British, one is French, and one is Russian. And Russia at the time was, of course, the USSR, the Soviet Union, communists, if you will. And communism kind of plays a role in this film a little bit. We'll get to that later. And this film centers around the character of Holly Martins, who is portrayed by Joseph Cotten. And Joseph Cotten's been an actor whom I've always been a huge fan of. He is not so much a leading man, but he can play a leading man. He can also be a character actor. He and Orson Welles were great friends. He, of course, was in a couple of Orson Welles films, Citizen Kane, as well as The Magnificent Ambersons. And it's really nice to see him in this role. And I thought he was rather good in this role. But he starts off coming to Vienna because he has been promised a job by his longtime friend, Harry Lime, who is portrayed by Orson Welles. And when he gets there, he finds out that his friend, who has offered him this job, is dead. And it's like, oh man, that must suck. I mean, he's a pulp writer, but he's not really a famous pulp writer. He kind of writes, my guess is like novels you would find at a grocery store or something like that. He's not on any New York Times bestseller list. He writes like pulpy Western novels. And he doesn't really have a lot of money, and he doesn't really have a lot of fame or anything like that. And he gets there, his friend is dead, and the film is essentially about him trying to figure out how his friend died, what were the circumstances behind it, and a lot of things get muffled. A lot of things tend to to change. Stories aren't quite the same for everybody involved, and he begins to kind of investigate. He essentially becomes a bit of a detective in this film, and I thought that was really kind of quintessential film noir. Someone trying to figure out somebody who is murdered, and it's a really interesting, twisty, turvy movie from that perspective. But one of the main aspects of the film that I think is great is the cinematography. The cinematography of this film is just amazing. It's really unlike most film noirs. Granted, it is in black and white, which is kind of traditional, but it's harsh black and white. Really, really harsh. A lot of blown out lighting, a lot of dark alleyways, and a lot of Dutch angles. You don't see a lot of Dutch angles in film noirs typically, but this film utilizes them a lot. And I thought that was really interesting. Stephen, what did you think of the eccentricity in the cinematography?
Yeah, man, it is a gorgeous black and white film. And I was gonna say the Dutch angles are like crazy in this movie. They're everywhere. It's like watching Thor, you know, Kenneth Branagh. Just they're everywhere. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, and I'll say another aspect of the film that I really loved, and to me is part of what made this film a more unique film noir is the score. The score has a more European feel to it, being that they are in Europe. It has a different sound to it. It said do 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 do, like it has this like kind of almost whimsy to it in a way.
It was done by a guy named Anton Karas, and it was done on a zither. A zither is this instrument that's it's a stringed instrument, but you kind of hold it and you kind of pluck it, if you will. It's kind of like a guitar with no neck. That's kind of what it looks like, and it creates this very interesting sound. It's very almost carnival-esque sound, and it's utilized a lot in this film, and it keeps the film in a weird tone, and in a very weird tone because the film is dark. We're dealing with murder and corruption and lies and truth and all that kind of stuff, but you also have this kind of jolly score to it.
It feels like farcy, very farcy kind of like Pink Panther-y type of like it's almost trying to make fun of something, but it's not. It's like taking itself completely seriously. Like I don't know, it's odd.
Every time it kicks in, you're supposed to have a goofy grin on your face.
Yeah,
you know? It feels very Coen Brothers-esque, if you will. It feels very odd in that respect, where you're just kind of jamming these two tones together, and it's just weird. But the main character, Holly Martins, goes through this kind of journey for the first hour of the film. First hour of the film, he's investigating his friend's death. He actually gets there apparently right at the perfect time to where he goes right to his friend's funeral. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect timing. And everybody is there, and he sees all these people that he is going to interact with throughout the movie. There's a baron. There's the woman who is the character's name is Anna Schmidt, who was kind of Harry Lime's lover, if you will, kind of romantic interest. There's a doctor. There's the porter. There's a bunch of different characters in this film, and essentially the way Harry Lime dies, or the way they keep telling how Harry Lime dies, is while crossing the street, he was hit by a car, and that's how he died. But it was odd because all of the people there were all like his friends. Like he was walking with a friend, his driver was driving the car, and he was waving at somebody that he knew. And it's like, wait a minute. And in the back of my mind, as you're watching it, you're like, way too coincidental. You know what I mean? That's way too convenient to happen.
Yeah, none of the stories are really adding up. You know, we're getting different and different things from different people, and of course, also we have this detective who's also at the funeral. Yes. That's really getting on his case the whole time.
Trevor Howard, who portrays Major Calloway, and he is kind of the leader of the British police that's policing the British zone, if you will, and he was very antagonistic throughout the movie. You know what I mean? He's constantly trying to find out the truth about Harry Lime, trying to really stop the Joseph Cotton character and what he's doing, and just creating all kind of problems. And it's really interesting how towards the end of the film, which we'll get to, that they end up working together. Um, but like Steven said, none of these stories end up adding up. Basically, one person says, "Oh yeah, we carried him to the side of the road, and that's where he died." Another person says, "Oh yeah, he died instantly. Like he was dead, and we carried him off the side of the road." And then the porter kind of lets it slip, like, "Oh, there was three men there. You know, he was in the porter was in the window, and he saw the accident happen." And it was coincidental that it actually happened right outside Harry Lime's place as well. All these things seem very suspicious. And he said, "Oh yeah, there was a third man who helped carry him away." So uh, Joseph Cotton's character is trying to find out who this third man is, and that is coincidentally the title of the film, The Third Man. And he is getting deeper and deeper into things, and he realizes that it's a whole lot of BS. Like everybody is lying essentially. You know, he also develops a kind of quasi romantic relationship with the Anna Schmidt character, but it's a very weird relationship there. It almost seems a little forced in, but almost seems like it adds a little layer of thematic stuff into the film as well, because you get that kind of that doomed romance, or that romance that probably can never be because of the circumstances. You know, she is still in love with Harry Lime even though she believes he's dead. She thinks that he's a good guy, but as we come to learn, the Harry Lime character doesn't give a good crap about anybody but himself. And when we get to him, it's a really interesting character reveal. So for the first hour of this film, like I said, it's him doing this investigative work, and then you discover that Harry Lime is actually alive. That the person who is dead and is in this grave is somebody else. It's somebody who the Trevor Howard character was looking for. This guy who was a bit of a partner with Harry Lime, and we learned that Harry Lime is not a good guy. He's somebody who they constantly say is involved in a racket or is involved in something illegal. I assume it's the black market, because you know post war there's going to be an underground market full of goods that people can't get because of just the instability of the society of the time. And it's really interesting how they really broach a subject, but they really don't come out right and say it. It's almost like a social commentary on organized crime in the underground of Europe in post-World War II society. But like I said, Orson Welles shows up, and it's one of the best character reveals. Basically, Holly Martin says, you know, "Come out of the shadows. You know, what are you doing standing over there?" And all of a sudden, this street light, or this car, I think it's a headlight, flashes on him.
It's a woman. It's a woman who's upset at him for yelling in the streets, and she turns on her room light.
Turns on her room light, and it glistens on him, and we see Orson Welles, and he just smiles, and it's like, "What are you smiling about? You dangerous man, you!" And it's very cool, because then that music kicks in. That music kicks in that Steven mentioned before, and it's very interesting scene. And then a car drives by, and he's gone. He disappears. He runs away. Holly Martin chases him, and he can't find him. He loses him. And then he goes to the police, and he's like, "He's still alive, guys. The guy, Harry Lime's not dead. He's still alive." And he brings him to the scene. It's like, oh, where could he possibly go? And you discover that there are underground, basically, catacombs or sewers in Vienna, and that's pretty much where he's able to go from zone to zone and hide out or whatever. And it's really kind of an interesting underground system they have going on there. But going back to the cinematography of the film, is that a lot of this film takes place at night. And a lot of this film, the city of Vienna is almost an extra character. I don't know if you noticed that, Steven, but I found that just the way they shot it, and the way like the streets were like cobblestone, and there was also like destroyed buildings around, and it felt very dark. And I think they actually shot most of the film in actually Vienna. You know,
Yeah, I mean, there's, even a scene I think that was a little earlier than that that really showed the city um, very well, where he was actually getting chased by, I think, some of Harry's associates that have been, or other criminals that are,
yes.
and he's running away from them, and you really get a good look at the city and the destroyed buildings, and it's a great chase scene.
Yeah, it's really just cinematography unlike you've seen before. It takes a lot from the German expressionism from the 1920s, a lot of harsh lighting, a lot of harsh blacks, and it's kind of where the film noir genre was born out of that. And certainly the aesthetic was born out of that, and this film takes those elements. But as the film progresses, you see that the there's another scene act before I go even further, where Holly Martins knows he's alive. The police have dug up the grave. They know it's a guy that's not who Harry Lime is, and he meets with him at that Ferris wheel. It's a very famous scene. I mean, you could actually just watch this scene on YouTube, and it's a great scene. Where basically it's brief, but you understand who the character of Harry Lime is and his morality. He has a very grayish amorality. You know what I mean? He's not a good guy. He doesn't care about people at all. There's the famous line. There's the line where he's like, look at him. If I were to tell you that you would get $20,000 for every one of them that just that died, how many of them would you not care about? You know what I mean? And it's really really interesting. There's of course the famous cuckoo clock line, which apparently was just added into the film by Orson Welles because that's what Orson Welles did. Orson Welles pretty much did whatever he wanted because he knew he was smarter than everybody, and he added that in. And it's another very interesting thing where it's like he references the Borgias, the cardinals who ran Italy for like 30 years, and it was like a lot of blood and all this, and all blood and carnage and death and stuff like that. But we also got Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo and the Renaissance. So it's like this idea of there is a diamond in the rough. You know what I mean? Like great pain and great dark times can also breed a lot of great things. And whereas he said, Sweden, peace for 500 years, and all we got was the cuckoo clock. And it's like, which one would you rather have? And it's almost as like he's an agent of chaos. He believes that uh, through these post-war through the war, he's able to now flourish because of the black market, because of these illegal dealings. He's able to actually profit from them, and he's now escaped into the Russian zone where they're kind of like protecting him. So there's this kind of thing where I kind of believe that he leans towards communism as something preferable than Western ideals. I mean, maybe I'm drawing into that, but it's very very interesting how a lot of these themes kind of flush up during the time, considering the context of the movie. I don't know. Did you see a lot of stuff like that, Steven? Because I feel like I'm talking too much here.
No, well, no. I mean, you know this film a lot better than I do. You've seen it more than I have, but I will say that I find a thing that came to my mind thinking about this movie is what if this scenario wouldn't even have happened? I would assume that this job he had for him was working with him doing this illegal activity.
Oh, yeah, because he says, if you want, when they get off the Ferris wheel, he says, if you want in on what I'm doing, just give me a call. You'll come right in. You know what I mean? Give me some.
One of the great things too is one of the themes is just not knowing the person you thought you knew, not really knowing them, and that's kind of something that he goes through and something that his lover goes through, not really knowing the real person. She's a little bit more naive about it, or she's just okay with it. I think she's a little bit okay with it. I think she knows that he's not really that great of a guy, but sometimes you just don't pick the people that you love, just like you don't always pick your friends, your true friends. And I think that's kind of one of the themes of the running through the film a little bit.
Well, she knows that he's into illegal stuff because she got him he got her those illegal like passport papers and stuff. Basically says that she's where she's supposed to be because she's supposed to be in the Russian side. She's from Czechoslovakia, and that's where she's supposed to be. But she doesn't want to be there. She wants to be in the good side, if you will. You know, Western European, the French, British, and of course the United States. And that's where she believes she'll have the better life. You know what I mean? And in a way, you're like, oh, Harry Lime, what a nice guy. He can provide papers for people to get out of the communist Russia and all this kind of stuff. But then towards the end of the film, right before Joseph Cotton is basically going to turn on him to capture him, Trevor Howard brings him. Trevor Howard's Magic Calorie brings him to a hospital where these kids were, I guess, were given what they believed was penicillin, but I'm guessing it was probably not. It was maybe something like a fake penicillin or like another drug that they pretended it to be penicillin or something like that. They don't really say, but then you basically see, oh, what this guy is doing does have very negative ramifications to the people of Austria, you know, Vienna. And that's when he says, okay, yeah, I'm gonna turn on him to capture him. And then you get this great chase scene at the end of the movie in the catacombs. It's dark. There's lighting from like just the openings and the pipings, and there's the iconic shot which you've seen on many posters, and it was the front of DVDs and stuff. Is him just standing there, just his silhouette and just the light flashing. It's an amazing shot. I really want a poster like that. It was the cover of the now out of print Criterion Blu-ray / DVD, which if you can find it, and I would highly recommend getting it because it's now out of print and goes for hundreds of dollars on eBay, and it's a travesty I didn't buy it when I had the chance. But you can find this film, like Steven has that edition there. It's put out by Lionsgate. It's the Studio Canal version. You can find it here in the States. It is very cheap. You can find it for like pretty much like $10 or around that price. I did hear there's a new 4K restoration they just did, so I'm guessing we're going to get another release at some point. So keep your eyes out for that. But yeah, this film is an essential all-time classic noir. There's a reason why it's in on this list. It is a very short film, but it's very complex, like we've discussed here. And yeah, I've said so much about The Third Man that I didn't think I was going to say so much about such a short movie.
Yeah, it's just it. You know, like you said, it's one of the movies that the more you watch it, the more you can really just find all these different layers to it, not just to the story, but to, you know, like we talked about the cinematography, the directing, the score, the acting. Like there's so much to this movie that lends itself to being a great film. And I feel like amongst cinephiles, you know, yeah, it's a movie we know, but common folks don't know about this movie, and they need to. It's a great film. And to me, it's you know, it is a kind of like a founding father or Mount Rushmore of film noirs. It's just it has all the things that you like in your film noirs, but it also has a lot about it that's unique and makes it stand apart from a lot of other ones. I would put that there. I would probably put a film like Double Indemnity probably as one of the top ones. Sunset Boulevard's probably another one.
I mean, we've discussed several of them on here. Out of the Past, which we've done a video on.
Out of the Past is great.
Double Indemnity, which Steven said we've done a video on it as well. And Carol Reed is a director not a lot of people are familiar with. He, of course, did The Third Man. He also did Oliver, which I believe is an adaptation of Oliver Twist. He did The Agony and the Ecstasy. He did this other movie called Night Train to Munich. He did this. He also did a movie called Odd Man Out, starring James Mason, that's also kind of a film noir. It's a very dark, black and white, takes place at night. Really good. But he's an underrated director, in my opinion. And I would say check out his work as well. Also, check out the work of Orson Welles. He is one of my favorite people in cinema ever, and I constantly champion his stuff. He was a genius who was so far beyond his years. People didn't know how to understand his work. And I think it's just truly ambitious stuff. And he was a great actor. He's great in this movie. I think he steals this movie as soon as he gets on screen. He's in it very briefly, but I think he steals every scene he is in. And I highly recommend watching The Third Man. I also highly recommend getting this book if you're really interested in all of the movies. If you're interested in just books I would recommend about movies, this is one I would definitely pick up as well. So if there's nothing else to say, Steven, where can you be found on the internet?
You can find me on YouTube's and Facebook and Instagram, Film Club Central. Do a lot of different stuff on there. And also, of course, with Dan Skep Allen on this channel, also doing Top 5 Weekly and of this 52 Must-See Movies and Why They Matter.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Cabzilla06, as well as my own YouTube channel, Cabzilla Productions. And, of course, here doing more of these videos, as well as our Top 5 Weekly show. And, yeah, this is a very interesting list of movies, and it's a very long and very involved series of videos we are doing. I think we are going to keep going until we hit that magic number of 52. I don't know which number we're at yet. I never know. So
I try not to think about it.
Yeah, we could be halfway. We could not be halfway. I honestly don't know, and that's the fun of all this. So,
yeah. We're gonna keep watching these great films and talking about them. Me and Andrew got to do most of them. So
you're gonna be seeing us a lot. If you're getting sick of us, I hate to break it to you, you're gonna be seeing us a lot more. All right, so until we extend this video on forever, we're probably going to say goodbye. So until next time.